The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar on how to avoid death by PowerPoint. This is Victoria Beale. I'm the director of the Ohio LTAP Center, and I'm going to be playing double duty today. I'm going to be your presenter and the person running the webinar, so I appreciate your patience as we work through today's content. One of the things I would like to encourage you to do throughout the presentation today is to please put questions in the question box. Hopefully you see that there in your GoToWebinar panel. We will not be taking any questions via raised hands. We're just going to take them through the question box. So please make certain if you have questions for me to put them in the question box. Also, you're going to find in the handout section of the GoToWebinar panel an outline for the content that we're going to discuss today. And I am going to talk about this outline not only throughout the presentation, but as a tool that's going to be discussed within the presentation itself. So hopefully you're able to download it. If not, know that we'll follow up with a email after today's presentation with a link to that handout. So I don't know how many of you have seen that movie from the 80s, The Sandlot, but there's a pretty famous or infamous quote out of it. It says, "You're killing me, Smalls." Those of you who know the LTAP staff here know probably Ray Brushart, and we frequently, he and I banter this phrase back and forth, but I have to tell you, sometimes when I'm sitting in a presentation and there's this conference coming up here in about 3 weeks from today that I feel a lot of us will be attending or presenting at, possibly. And when I'm sitting in the back of a session, a lot of times at this conference that happens annually, I feel like this. I feel like the kid on the screen here, like, "You're killing me, Smalls," when I see people put their PowerPoint presentations up on the screen. So hopefully you're going to take away some great tips from today. And if you are presenting at that conference here in 3 weeks, maybe you'll be able to incorporate some of these tips into your presentation so you don't have a whole room full of people with the same look on their face that the character from this movie has on their face here on the screen. So one of the things that with PowerPoint, when I see people basically misusing it through a presentation, that I think of also is the look on this person's face about, "Please stop, I can take no more." Because, presentations using PowerPoint really shouldn't have PowerPoint as the main focus. The PowerPoint is not the storyteller, you are. And a lot of people misuse PowerPoint and use it the other way around. PowerPoint really can turn into the cockroach of the office when it shows up and no one likes it because of the way it's being misused. So, you need to use PowerPoint in the way that it was intended, and that's to enhance your presentation, not to be the presentation with, you taking second chair basically to it. So why do I say this? Because sometimes people are basically trying to use PowerPoint to write a book. And I know that we've all been in presentations when people have put every single thing that they were going to say on the PowerPoint and read it word for word. And if you do that, then basically you have fulfilled the definition of killing somebody, death by PowerPoint. So, and I say that tongue in cheek. I mean, no one's really dying, but it can just become a painful situation where it's very monotonous. PowerPoint, as I said, is intended to enhance your presentation. When I think about sitting down to watch a show on television, or even a documentary, I know, we probably through the years, even if you're not a documentary fan, have sat through some of them, that the filmmakers, they don't put every single word of the script up on the screen. And that's, PowerPoint wasn't meant to do that. It has the ability to do it, but it wasn't meant to. So, think about a documentary or even your favorite film. You wouldn't expect to see every single word that the individuals are saying up on the screen. It would really detract from what was going on with the movie itself. So you have to look at PowerPoint as if it's an enhancement that helps to really shore up what you're trying to present. When you want people to step away from your presentation, you want them to think about the content and what you've said, not necessarily, oh my gosh, I can't believe they put that chart up on the screen that I couldn't read. Looks like we do have somebody who is having issues hearing me. So I was hoping if hopefully everybody else can hear me. If you can hear me, if you could just drop me a quick message or a yes in the question box, I'd appreciate that. Want to make sure that this isn't a global outage. Okay, lots of people that can hear me, so I appreciate it. Thank you guys for dropping those yeses in there. We'll keep going then. And hopefully that individual is able to get it figured out for themselves. So now that you've seen what it is that you shouldn't be doing, we'll start working and talking about things that you should be doing. And, the types of presentations I feel that are done most often by those in our industry are technical presentations. We also have informational presentations, and we have presentations where we're teaching information. Now, as each one of those items came up on the screen, this is another technique that you can use to enhance your presentation. Is I have not put the complete, bullet point up on there as far as the sentence that I said, but I just used a keyword. And as I use that keyword, I also grayed out the word that I just finished talking about. And as I brought the new word in, it was brought in so it was actually brighter on the screen or more eye-catching than those that I completed with. If I scroll back through it, you'll see that I can go in backwards mode. And I've had some people ask me, well, how do you do that? How do you make PowerPoint do that? Well, in my case, I try to keep things simple. And what I did is I went in and just made 4 screens. I started off with a black screen, and then I made a new screen, did copy paste and added the first bullet on there of technical. And then I did copy paste and I changed technical to be a gray font and put informational in as a white font. And then the next screen, I put in the last bullet, last keyword, which was teaching, and I made, informational gray and teaching the bright white font. So it wasn't I don't think any special features in PowerPoint other than just copy paste. It looks like it's one slide. It looks like I've used some type of magic to bring words in, but really it wasn't one slide. It was 4 different ones. So, and one of the things I'm going to do as a follow-up to this webinar, which was something that came about as a request from someone who had actually watched an old version of this webinar on our YouTube channel. I don't know how many of you know that LTAP has a YouTube channel, but we do, and we put all of our webinars out there. You can't get CPD credit for watching a YouTube video from our channel, but you can get the content. But they were asking, how did I do these different techniques? So I'm going to make some little micro videos, we call it micro learning, and put those out there as well that explains how to do that. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you. And we'll let everybody on this webinar know once we've got those micro learning videos out there. So, all right. I want you to know, as far as your presentation, that there really is a hero inside of all of us. And we can be presentation heroes by not falling into the death by PowerPoint trap. So, as you are putting your presentation together, or maybe you have one that you have revamped and revamped, take some time. You don't have to put all the changes in at once. If you have a few minutes here or there, or maybe a half an hour block, you could pull that presentation up and work on it. even small changes that help to incorporate the tips in this presentation can really make a difference. People kind of breathe a sigh of relief when they get to those slides that talk about or use these different techniques. So, don't make your presentation something that's going to penalize everybody in the room that has to sit through it. If you really don't have the time to make the presentation in PowerPoint an enhancement of your presentation, really an enhancer for your presentation, see if somebody else is available to give the presentation. Because, you represent not only yourself, but your agency, your office, your company, and, you want to make certain that you're putting your best foot forward on behalf of, who it is that you work for and, how you represent yourself. So if all you have time to do is throw words on a slide and full sentences, and your intent is to just read the presentation from there, don't do it. See if somebody else is available to put it together, because you want the best possible presentation for those who are, sitting through the session that you're providing or the training you're providing. So, as we are moving through, there are, and I've kind of alluded to this, slides that can have way too much text. And if you're following along in the outline, we are under number 3 now for topics. Here's the thing, guys. Sentences are out and keywords are in. So you want to make certain that you are doing what you can to not show a slide that has all those sentences on it. On the flip side, there is a thing as there can be too many bullet points on a slide. And hopefully you kind of got the sense of that as I was moving all of those bullet points, which truly they are keywords, but it's very cluttered. It's very busy. It doesn't pull your eye to just one place on the PowerPoint. So, keep that in mind too as you're moving through. Don't make your slides too busy with too many bullet points. Don't overuse them. So we're back to the slide that has way too many sentences on it. And if you really are stuck having to use something like this, instead of spreading it out with one idea per slide, you can always do what I call a call-out box. Try to draw their eye to the one place that you're going to talk about or the one piece that you're talking about at that point. On this slide, I decided that the final sentence was something that, we would try to highlight as an example. So you saw when I had just the slide itself up with all those sentences on it, how you really are lost. There's nothing that really draws your eye to one particular place. But when I put that red call-out box up, it really draws your line to that final sentence talking about putting a decimal point in red ink, and then how that helps visual perception with a dyslexic child. And this is one of the suggestions for teaching math. So if we were going to demonstrate that, we will take the number 3.14, and then, we could always enhance it by adding that red bullet point. So you see how when I went from just the slide with the call out box over to the numbers, it really brought out that there was just one item on the slide that we were talking about, and then adding that red into the decimal point, it made an emphasis. So, think about how you can visually represent what you're talking about. They don't need the PowerPoint itself as a takeaway for a reference. You can give them an outline like I've given you, that you were hopefully able to download. And I encourage you to do that as opposed to trying to put every single word on your PowerPoint. Visually represent your ideas, because you want them to focus on what you're saying and have the image and the visual representation just be something that reinforces that or hones it, backs it up. So like when I talk about, a handout and I'm saying don't use the 3 slides with the note lines to the side from PowerPoint that you can print, but instead use a one-pager. I've represented that on the screen here for you. On the left side, it's saying no, and I showed you an image of those 3 slides with the note lines, and then an arrow to the right that says yes with an example of a one-pager. That really visually brings home the point of what I'm saying, and hopefully you think about that later, as you're working on your own presentations, saying, I don't want to just do a PDF printout of my presentation. I want to do a a one pager to go along with my presentation, because the one pager is going to give them the takeaways, and the PowerPoint itself was just really to enhance what I'm talking about. Another thing that I think is very important as you are presenting is to think about contrast and how you have the information up on the screen. So you saw earlier when I was going over the 3 types of presentations, how I would gray out each word and bring in the next one so it was brighter on the screen. You can also work with the contrast features in PowerPoint to make what's most important brightest on the screen by having the background turn black. And this is a real simple feature in PowerPoint, which again, I'm going to put some micro learnings together and we'll send the link out to you to show you how to do that. But this slide was fairly simple for me to put together. If I'll back up for 1 second, I put the word contrast on the slide, just a white background, I put contrast. I found the apple pictures, which were part of the PowerPoint images that were available. And then I went in and turned on the feature where I inverted the background color to be black, which made my font white. And it really makes the image you have on there, I feel, stand out on the screen as opposed to the black font on the white background. So contrast is important, but I will caution you, don't get too crazy with contrast. When you look at the screen that I've got up right now, this one hurts my eyes, honestly. And, I think it's critically important that you remember that we have to stick with contrast that works, but not overwhelming contrast. And there is a whole area out there that talks about what they call 508 compliance, and it's ADA compliance for people who have vision issues, and what colors will work well together and what don't for someone with vision issues. I can tell you what's on the screen right now does not work well for someone with vision issues. So just so you're aware that's out there, that could be its whole own day-long class. So I'm not going to delve any further into that, but I did want to make sure that you knew that there's a place where you can draw the line and say, no, I'm not going to go with that much contrast because it's really something that isn't going to work well. They find that if you stick to 3 or 4 colors, and you can always go out and, do a little Google search for what colors would work well, then, you want to make certain that your colors are coordinated. Like the screen here, you can see that there's a coordination of some different colors, and, visually it works well together. So keeping that in mind, you want to keep focus for keywords as they appear, brighten them, gray them out. You can make keywords different colors even, like I've done here. You also, want to leverage your contrast, but don't make it too crazy. And then you want to streamline your color scheme. So as I went through each of those bullets, you saw that I changed the font color from red to white, or white to red, as I spoke about each one. The other thing I did is I made the one I was going to talk about not only red in color, but I bolded it. So it looks like it's a little bigger, but it's really not. If I go back, you'll see leverage contrast. It's actually the same font size as keep focus and streamline color scheme. Streamline color scheme, but the leverage contrast has been bolded. So that's another way that you can make certain to keep people's attention as you're talking about different items, and you're using what's on the screen to reinforce what you're talking about. So let's talk about font. It's important that what you're talking about at the time is the largest font on the screen. So in this case, suggestions for teaching math, that's the largest font on this screen. So that should be technically what we're talking about. My rule of thumb is to try not to use any less than 30-point font on a screen. And I know that sounds really large, but if you're not trying to fit a book onto the screen like they've done here, then 30-point font's going to work fine for you. You want to keep your font simple and easy to read. The font that's on this slide, while it might be a simple font, there's too much of it. So, we've talked about font size, readability. They say to stick with the sans serif family of fonts and to stay away from heavily stylized fonts. I would say anything that's really curvy, has lots of curly cues in it. You want readability. Think about street signs. I mean, we're all in the industry. Think about, what font is used on overhead signs on the highway or signs out along the roadway, street name signs. We want it to be simple because we want those who are in our presentation to be able to quickly read it and then refocus back on us. So make sure that you're keeping your fonts simple. We do not want random sized letters all together like you see on the screen here. I don't know about you guys, but that kind of hurts my head too when I see it, the no random sizes, the way I put it on there, with different letters being different sizes than other letters. And then please don't use all caps. That is known as yelling at somebody. So whether it's in your PowerPoint or it's in your email, that's just something that someone may very well assume that you're doing. So don't use all caps. You want to make sure you're using the proper upper and lowercase fonts sizes when you're putting your presentation together. And I know that we can't all be one of these spelling bee award recipients. I'm definitely not someone that ever would have even made it past the classroom initially when we were practicing for spelling bee, but you can and you should check out the spelling that you're using on your presentation. It's really important. Don't just count on autocorrect. Autocorrect makes some great jokes at times, when people use it or let autocorrect take over their lives. But what it comes down to is that, autocorrect is going to say something you never intended to say. So it's important when you're working on a presentation, even if you're just using bullet point, single words, take time, go through and read it and make certain that you have the proper word in there, that autocorrect hasn't decided to change something for you. I can tell you, as I sit down and in different sessions, that normally I'm going to find at least one misspelled word in a presentation. One key or one thing I used to do back when I was, using an old-fashioned typewriter to write things up is I would actually go back through and read what I had written backwards. And not like literally read it backwards, but I would go backwards just to check the spelling of words to make sure that there was something that as I was reading it forwards I hadn't missed or my mind hadn't, read it one way, but it was really written or typed another way. So that's just another tip there. Next, we're going to talk about objects. And the screen I've put up, talks about Q3 performance, but it has a lot of objects on the screen. And if you were in the back of a room where this presentation was being given, there's a real good chance that you wouldn't be able to see a lot of what was on the screen beyond the fact that there was a bar chart and a pie graph. So, it's really important as you're putting screens together for objects not to have any more than 6. So less than or equal to 6. And you see how, again, I've used that technique of, having items on the screen, but setting it up so there's multiple screens, and I had each item that I was emphasizing at the time turn a different color and then be bolded. So, it's important, again, less than or equal to 6. Also, please, no annoying animated images on your screen, because inevitably you're, even if this is the only thing on your screen, you may get stuck here talking for a little while. And that little animation is just going to keep playing over and over again and really annoy individuals. So I'm not saying don't use videos. Videos are great. I'm just saying, limit or eliminate the use of animated clip art, that type of thing. It's great if you're in middle school, but not so great when you're out in the professional world. You want to make sure, on your screen, as we just talked about, you want to enhance and not distract. So, no animated clip art, moving items, no signaling colors. And we talked about the contrast. Make sure that your contrast is appropriate. You don't want to have anything in incredibly high contrast that makes it difficult to read or see. And then you want to make sure that you have things larger in size, because larger in size does make it visually better for the learner to be able to see on the screen. Just make sure as you have it larger in size that you don't have moving items, signaling colors, too high of a contrast. So along with this, there's a few other items to remember. One of them is make sure when you introduce an acronym for the first time that you spell it out. I have to tell you that when my kids first started texting me all these acronyms that they use in their text messages, I had to keep going out and Googling them. So, in our transportation world, there are so many acronyms that those of us who've been here for a while just take for granted that everybody understands. But if you're doing a presentation, there's a really good chance that you're going to have a newbie in there who doesn't yet understand it and needs to be educated. And those who understand it, it's not going to bother them that the very first time you use it in the presentation, you spelled it out and said what it was. Because, hopefully the majority of people know that that's really the way it should be done. So again, make sure you're dealing with your acronyms properly. And I wanted to mention, when I said 6 or less per screen, I wasn't talking about like 6 pie charts per screen with lots of information in each pie chart. You really need to, when you say limit the number of items on the screen, it could be that your number of items on the screen contain more items in them. And this isn't just 6 pie charts. This is 6 times however many pieces of pie are in there, times however many items are in each piece of pie. Or you might have one big pie chart with a lot of data on it. And again, this is really too much information. It's information overload. So, while this is one item on the screen, it's one item times however many pieces of that pie was broken into. Or you could have one chart that just gives you way too much data all in that chart for it to truly be understandable and digestible by your audience. So these are the types of charts that I would avoid. And if I needed to use information out of one of these types of charts, I would just pull that information onto the screen. I would do my very best to clip out just the piece I needed and make it much larger on the screen if I had to use this pie chart. Or if I had to use one of the pie charts in the first PowerPoint slide I showed you with the 6 pie charts in it, I would just display them pie chart by pie chart. Like this one here, trainings by offering method, we have just one pie chart on the screen. And, say we just want to talk about one piece of it, we could do a call out and show, just the live webinars, which was in the bottom right-hand side, and then repeat that color there on the call out. So that way they could match it up with the piece of the pie chart so they could see the percentage. You have to always think about this from the perspective of that person in the back of the room. So I'm not seeing any other questions right now. Just want to let you know, though, that I am watching for those. So with what's on the screen here, it's really important, like I said, to keep the information as visible as possible, have it enhance what you're talking about. Another great thing you can do is to get your audience engaged, because people learn by doing. And I think a lot of people feel like this is the apex of a presentation, especially if you're doing it live, is to get audience engagement. And I'm going to show you in a couple of slides one of the audience response systems we use. But, when people do, that's where they really learn the most, or they learn the best. I think back to a retreat that we had for 2 divisions here within the agency, and it's probably been over 10 years now, but they actually had an activity where they got us up out of our seats, had us move around the room, and that movement, that engagement with others, I remember that. I remember still what it is that we learned through that. I can't tell you what went on the rest of the day, but I can tell you that piece. So it's very important if you can find a way to get people involved to do it, because it lets them practice what it is you're trying to teach them, and or practice what it is that you're trying to communicate. So even if it's just getting feedback, say, on a section of your presentation, maybe their thoughts or their opinions or on something, take advantage of it. There are softwares out there, and I am not going to endorse the one that I'm going to show you on the next screen. We don't endorse any software in particular, but this is one that our program has used. It's called Mentimeter. And, I used it at the TRB annual meeting. I chair a committee there. And we did a activity where we had people, give us feedback on what they felt was useful portions of the annual meeting, the little committee meeting that we do within the annual meeting. So people could vote for more than one item on this, but they voted using their smartphone for Mentimeter. And I think Mentimeter will give you up to like 3 questions for free that you can do without having to actually get a subscription. And there's lots of other softwares that are out there. So I would encourage you to take some time to see what's available. And then, even if you can't incorporate it right then, the next time you have a little bit of time, get it incorporated. Even if you just do the demographics of your audience. Who is it that has joined us? Tell us where you're from. It still gets them engaged and gets them paying attention. Again, to learn, students need to do something. Get up, get them moving. So I like the image here where we have the caterpillar on the left, and then we have the different stages of metamorphosis all the way up to the butterfly on the right. Now, obviously this was a staged photo because this doesn't all happen at once, but I want to challenge you guys, because I feel like for many of you, you probably signed up for this webinar because you're that caterpillar on the left. And you need to start taking time to let the metamorphosis happen. So, encourage yourself, block a little bit of time, even if it's just half an hour on a Friday afternoon, and say, okay, I'm going to go through and see if I can pick a section of my presentation that I give a lot and, you know, take a few of those slides and incorporate more keywords, bullet points, as opposed to all this text that I've got in there. Or maybe you're going to look at an audience response system and get 2 or 3 questions worked in that you can use with people. It's really important to take the time to do that. I encourage you, start off, if nothing else, by at least going through and double checking the spelling on your presentation. That can be a real turnoff to your audience if they're watching you and watching the PowerPoint on the screen and they see misspelled words. They're like, well, they didn't even take the time to prove what they did, so why should I pay attention to this presentation? So we do have a question that's come into the question box. It says, how much time do you typically set aside to create presentations? Me personally, it just really depends on what the topic is and how long it needs to be. A lot of times, I set aside at least double or triple the time of what the presentation itself is intended to be, because what I do, and you guys have it hopefully now downloaded, is I start with an outline. I don't just open up PowerPoint and start typing things in. I actually create an outline, and then once I have my outline, that's where I then work from the outline to create my PowerPoint. And I feel that really helps, especially when I try to visualize an idea, because I have the outline of where I'm going and what I want to communicate. So, when I was on the part of my outline for this presentation where it said too much text, I was out there looking for a slide that had too much text on it. And I've taken pictures of slides when I've been watching presentations before, but I decided to go out and find something that was just obviously not related to our industry because I didn't want anyone to feel like I was picking on them. So, you'll get a sense as you create presentations, how much time it takes you. And, when you want to try to incorporate or use this method, do allow yourself some extra time if this isn't the way that you normally do it. But, you can be that caterpillar on the screen that eventually ends up on the right-hand side as the butterfly that has come through and has a much more visually appealing PowerPoint that goes along with the presentation that you're giving, as opposed to letting PowerPoint be the presentation. So hopefully that's helpful. And I'm happy to take any other questions too. We've come down actually to the end of our discussion today about how to not kill people with PowerPoint. And you have my contact information there on the screen. And I'm happy to hang on for, a few minutes if anyone else has any more questions they'd like to put in the chat box. But I'm hoping that this has inspired you to move forward with looking at presentations you have, or maybe ones that you need to prepare for that conference that's happening in 3 weeks from today, the start of, to make your presentation yourself and not the PowerPoint. Just have the PowerPoint be an enhancement for you. So I don't see any other questions come in the question box. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention today. I'm hoping that this will be a help for you, and please do keep an eye out in the next week or so. Hopefully I'll have those micro learnings finished and we'll be emailing the links out to you. Let's see. Yep, I think that's all the questions we have for right now. So, the PowerPoint types, someone has asked. Let me go back to that screen real quick. I'll tell you one quick tip too, as you're presenting, if you know what slide you were on that you need to go back to, you can just punch in the slide number and hit enter. It should, let's see, I have to get to the right screen here, sorry guys. Okay, so I'm back to slide number 6, and the types of PowerPoints were technical, informational, and then teaching. All right, I think that will hopefully be, oh, how will the microlearnings be announced? We're going to send out a link to everybody who had registered for this webinar for them to know that the microlearnings are available, and then we'll probably follow up with a general announcement and on the LTAP listserv too. So, all right, everyone have a great rest of your day. Take care, and we'll hopefully see you on another LTAP webinar soon.